Hello, this is Zamanzadeh from ZZNetworking.com. In order to see better, press this icon to view full screen. Now, in our last tutorial, we discussed constraints. We're going to go into more detail. Please don't let the coding fool you. It's actually very simple once you start doing it. Now, at the top we see create table con2. That's the name of our table. We go ahead and open up our parentheses. We put the name of our column, order underscore ID. It's going to have the char data type and a length of 3. Now, in the past, when we made a primary key constraint, you put next to it the word primary key. But the thing is, whenever you put a constraint, Oracle gives it a name. Suppose we want to go ahead and search or look up the names of our constraints. In order to do this and for us to understand what it is, it's good to go ahead and give our constraints a meaningful name. So right here we're going to make a column level constraint for this column order ID. So we go ahead and we put the reserved word constraint. Next step for a column level constraint is we have to give it a meaningful name. In this case, Oracle recommends that you give the name of the table followed by an underscore and the name of the column that the constraint is going to go on, followed by another underscore and the abbreviation of the constraint. You could actually name this anything you want. You could actually call this blah blah. You could call it anything you want. But a good practice is to go ahead and list the table name followed by an underscore, the column name, followed by another underscore, and then the abbreviation of your constraint. So we say constraint, we name our constraint. In this case, the table name is con2, the column name is order underscore ID, and the type of constraint is a primary key, so we put down PK, its abbreviation. We then go ahead and name our constraint. We list the constraint, primary key, followed by a comma, and then we go ahead and make our next columns. In this case, num ordered. It's char data type, length of 3, promotion, char data type 1, and close our parentheses. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to execute this, and you're going to see that this table is about to be created. Sure enough, we execute the code, and we get table created here in the bottom pane. Now, it's important for us to go ahead and mention that order ID is a primary key column. The reason why is in the next example, we had to have created this table first and made this a primary key for our next example to work. Now, we go ahead and let's create a second table. We'll call it con1. We go ahead and we list an order ID column, but this time we don't put primary key here because instead we're going to do a table level constraint. There's two kinds of constraints. You have column level and table level. For this one, we're going to deal with all our constraints later on. We just list the columns. Now we go down to customer name. That's another column we're having for this table. We say it's varchar2 and a length of 30. Now, you can put every single one of your constraints down here in your table level constraint, except for one, the not null constraint. That has to be done at the column level. It cannot be done at the table level. So, we once again say constraint, the reserved word. We name our constraint, the name of our table, con1, underscore customer underscore name, the name of our column, followed by another underscore, and the abbreviation of the not null constraint is NN. After we name our constraint, we have to specify the type, not null. We then go ahead and put a comma and move on to the rest of our coding. Order date is a date data type, ship date is a date data type, and promotion code is varchar2 with a length of 4. Now, we have to put this comma here. Make sure you do that, otherwise the code won't work. We then go ahead and list our constraints here at the table level. We use a reserved word constraint. We once again name our constraint. In this case, we're going to call it con1, the name of the table, followed by an underscore, the name of our column, order underscore ID, underscore PK, the abbreviation of primary key. We then go ahead and specify the type of constraint is a primary key constraint, and it's going to be on the order underscore ID column. This column right here at the top. We then have to, of course, put a comma because we're going to add a few more constraints. Now, remember how we added this constraint here? We created this table first. The reason why is if you want to make a foreign key constraint, the foreign key has to reference a primary key in a different table. If you don't specify a primary key in another table, you can't reference it in your foreign key constraint. This has to exist first before you can go ahead and add a foreign key constraint referencing it. So we want this order ID column here in con1 to go ahead and reference the order ID column here in con2. We want these two columns to match values, so that way when we're searching or querying, we say where order ID in con1 equals to con2 dot order ID, and the values match each other. So we go ahead and once again put the reserved word constraint. We name it con1, the name of our table, followed by an underscore, the name of our column, order ID, from con1, underscore underscore FK, because this is going to be a foreign key, that's the abbreviation. We put down foreign key, the type of our constraint. We put in parentheses order ID, that's this order underscore ID. And then instead of putting a comma, we go down to the next line and put the word references, that's a reserved word. The name of the table it references, con2, this table up here that we just created. We put con2, and then in parentheses we put the column that it references. Since this order ID is a primary key for this table, and it references the primary key for con2, these two tables now have a primary foreign key relationship. So this order underscore ID, which is the primary key for this table, is the foreign key for this table, and that's why we put down references con2 order underscore ID. Now we put a comma because we're going to add one more constraint. So we say once again constraint, the name of we're going to name our constraint. It could be anything we want, but we want to give it a meaningful name. So we put down the name of our table, con1 underscore ship underscore date, the name of the column we're going to deal with, and underscore CK, which is an abbreviation of the check constraint. We then go ahead and put the reserved word check. We open up a parentheses, and our condition for this constraint is that the order date has to be less than or equal to ship date. Meaning, we don't want somebody putting in an order date into this column that is after the date that the item is supposed to be shipped. We don't want erroneous data being added to this table, so we're putting this constraint that anytime somebody puts in a value for the order date column here, it has to be before the date that it's shipped, either on the same day or after. We then close our parentheses, and next video we'll execute this. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you.